Manchester. I'm Dominic Dyer, Care for the Wild. I'm really proud to see the Badger Army has come to my home city. And this is what's going to make people see. And listen, it's not just about cuts to social services. It's not just about cuts to the NHS. Those matter to all of us, and we should be marching on those issues today. But let's not forget that those people in that conference hall, the Prime Minister, Owen Patts and other ministers, are doing a wildlife crime in the counties of Gloucestershire and Somerset as we talk. They're lifting the protection on a species that's lived in these isles for 300,000 years, and they're shooting them, and they're trapping them, and they're killing them in the most cruel way. And the only thing those animals have done wrong is they've got TB. And they've got TB because of our intensive, dirty farming system. And this cull, every leading scientist in this country knows this cull won't work. Every leading animal welfare expert knows this cull won't work. And the economics of this cull are completely crazy. There are hundreds and thousands of people in this country that would get out in the dark and the rain and help to vaccinate these animals. But what are we doing? We're spending millions of pounds with helicopters flying over wounded badger patrols and trying to stop some of the hunt saboteurs and others who are brave here to stop these animals being killed, because we'd rather spend the money doing that and locking them up than allowing people to volunteer to cure these animals rather than kill them. And that's just not acceptable. Let's remember, how did these animals get this disease? The first case, 1971, when we found a badger with TB, and it's got steadily worse over the last 40 years as the intensive cattle business has grown. We moved 13 million cattle in this country. Over the last 6 years, we've moved 86 million of them. Do you know how many cases we've had for farmers breaking the law and moving these animals and selling them illegally? We've had 24 investigations, and we've had 11 prosecutions after 86 million movements. That shows you how seriously they take farm biosecurity and how much they want to deal with the problem. They just want to lift the protection on badgers, and they want those animals killed like a pest. They're not a pest. They're a protected species. They're important to us, and they're important to future generations as well. And remember, how did we get to this point? How did we find this disease grew? Well, I'll tell you, I used to work in government in the food industry and agriculture. I've got some knowledge of this, having worked at the senior levels of government and with the NFU. In 2001, you had foot and mouth in this country, a disease that spread through the northwest and other parts of the country at a rate we'd not seen since the late 1960s. The National Farmers Union lobbied Tony Blair when he was Prime Minister. So rather than vaccinate, they said, you have to kill all those animals. We need to stop the progression of this disease, but we don't want to stop the export of this cattle and meat into Europe if we vaccinate those cows against foot and mouth. So what did we do? We killed them all. We killed over 5-6 million animals, sheep and cattle. We shut down the countryside for 6 months. We delayed a general election, and we spent £6 billion in the process. And then the National Farmers Union came back, and they said, against all scientific advice, we want to restock these animals. We've got to get these farmers back on their feet. But the thing is, they wanted to bring in that cattle from the southwest of England. There was no foot and mouth in the southwest of England, but there was a significant level of TB. They moved those cattle in. They trebled the rate of that disease within 18 months. There was no tests whatsoever. They did not give a damn about the fact that TB was going to run riot through the cattle and into the badger community. And we're now paying the price all these years later. And they tell us this is a huge economic problem for farmers. Well, if that is the case, why is it that we're buying over 30,000 TB cattle a year, going into hospitals, going into schools, going into our armed forces? No labelling, no traceability at all. Our taxpayers' money is compensating the farmers for the slaughter cost, and then we're buying the meat. We don't even know it's TB infected meat. That is completely, utterly wrong. And then we have the National Farmers Union. We're here today celebrating. But the National Farmers Union isn't a normal union. If it was doing what it was doing today, and it was one of the unions in the TUC, there'd be an absolute outcry. Let me just explain that for a moment. The National Farmers Union controls the policy of government on this badger cull. They have been had them in an arm lock for the last 2 years. They've been pushing this policy day in, day out. The briefings, the policy-making process is all controlled through the National Farmers Union. They are an extension of government. They're actually subcontracting the killing government ministers to the National Farmers Union. This is not government officials shooting these badgers. This is the lampers and the pest controllers that are being paid by the NFU to kill these animals. And also the NFU is then working with the police to take information from peaceful protesters and get that information that they're not privileged to, they have no right to, from the police. They also set up an injunction And they went to the High Court to try and stop people like you even demonstrating against this cull. And to make matters worse, if you read the Sunday Times today, you will see that they've even influenced the sacking of a civil servant who dared speak her mind about how she thought this policy was wrong after working in government in the Ministry of Agriculture and DEFRA for nearly 20 years. That's an absolute disgrace, and that should not be happening in an open government democracy that we have today, and that cannot continue to go on. So what are we going to do in the future? Well, you know this cull is not working. We know trying to shoot these animals is not working. Many are becoming wounded. Many of these animals are dying in horrible conditions. There's a real risk that those animals will spread the disease, which is the exact opposite of what this cull is about. They're not getting the numbers. They were trying to get 5,300 of these animals over a 6-week period. We have good information to indicate they've probably only got a few hundred so far. They're desperately now trying to bring cages in to trap more animals. They will try and extend this cull. They'll try and blame all of you for getting in the way and making it difficult for the people that can kill these badgers. The fact is the badgers are too smart for them. The fact is the badgers have gone to ground. With a bit of luck, they're not going to come back up again. But that won't stop this cull. What you will now see is a debate will go on to gassing these animals. We know the government has been researching gassing. They tried it in the 1980s. Let me give you an example of what they did. They went down to Porton Down where we actually developed chemical weapons. They put a number of badgers in a pressure cell and they poisoned them in the most horrible conditions. The animals died excruciating, painful death. They filmed that and they brought it back to the Tory Agriculture Ministers under Margaret Thatcher. They looked at that video and they said, you take that away. We're never going to go forward with that policy. There's no way the public are going to support it. Well, here we are 30 years later and they're back trying it again. But it will be the same again. The public will not support gassing. The retailers, the food retailers who've done nothing to stop this won't be able to sell gassing either. And if any MP at the moment thinks he wants to go down to Porton Down and show his constituents how to kill a badger in that excruciating, painful, disgusting way, you're welcome, my friend. Let's see how many people are going to vote for you at the next election as a result. We don't care about wildlife. There are lots of people in the farming industry and government that don't want to vaccinate cattle. Why is that? Because we vaccinate those cows, and even if we get approval in the European Union to send them to Europe as live exports or as meat or dairy products, the Chinese and the Russians might not take those products. They might stop our market. Well, the Chinese market is very important. Peter Kendall's head of the NFU has been there in the last 12 months. Owen Paterson has been there. They know they need to sell to China to make money for British farming. But I will tell you this, it's not acceptable to destroy our wildlife after 300,000 years of living on this isle so we can sell cheap powdered milk to China. That's not the way we do things. We protect our wildlife here first, and we will have to find ways of getting agreement in the international community for vaccinating our cows. I also want to say this to you. There are solutions to this problem. The food retailers have great power to make a change on this. The Co-op, Waitrose, Sainsbury's, all of those companies, if they chose to, could back the badger vaccination programs that we've all been working hard on. They could be paying farmers more for their meat and dairy if they vaccinated their badgers and put in proper biosecurity at the farm gate level to stop the interaction between badgers and cattle which pass this disease on. And not only that, we will have trials in the next 18 months in this country of cattle vaccines. We've been working in Africa of all places to get this right, but the Welsh Government are making good progress in making that happen. But what we will see is this great long debate. It's going to take us 10 years to get approval for those vaccines. I tell you now, the UK government can get a derogation from the European Union that would give it an approval to vaccinate cows in the UK as long as those cows were not exported or sold into Europe. That's an opportunity for the retailers to say, we will buy those cows, we will buy the milk, we will buy the yogurt, and we will label it in store of having come from TB vaccinated cattle, which is helping to reduce the spread of this disease and is protecting badgers. And I'm telling you what, people in this crowd and across the country would pay more money for that, would help British farmers, would sell more British food, and we would protect British wildlife. Is that not the way to do this? Is that not the way forward? It most definitely must be. We have an opportunity here to do things differently. I have sympathies for farmers. If you're anti-badger cull, you're not anti-farmer. There are many good farmers out there that feel passionately in the same way that you do. A lot of them feel that they're being being intimidated by the National Farmers Union and by the government. Many of them are scared to speak up, so we must speak up for them. There is such a thing as wildlife-friendly farming. There is such a thing as responsible supermarkets that can protect our wildlife. But let me be clear about this. Lots of politicians will say to you, this is a targeted cull. We're just going to deal with the sick animals, as David Cameron keeps telling me. Well, let's just be clear about that. When we had the randomised badger cull that the last Labour government spent £50 million of your money on that killed 11,000 badgers, we found two very important things. The number of animals that had the disease at a very early stage where it didn't impact their health, and they had a very low risk of passing it to cattle was 16%. The number of animals that had that disease at late stage where the animals were falling ill and they were at high risk of spreading it was 1%. So 1% of badgers are what David Cameron says we should be killing in the tens of thousands because he thinks he's doing them a favour. That's a complete and utter lie, and we know it. And that won't wash for the British people. We will not kill these animals in this way. We will inject them and we will help them to be cured of any disease they carry, and we will deal with cattle in the same way. And farmers must get serious about cleaning up the cattle industry, and supermarkets must do the same as well. This is a powerful movement. This Tory party now has 134,000 members. It's lost 60% since David Cameron's been leader. The Wildlife Trusts alone in this country have 800,000 members. The National Trust has 4 million members. The RSPB has 3 million members. There are tens of thousands of people supporting Care for the Wild and other charities in this campaign. Together, we're a powerful force. Ed Miliband realised that last week when he said he's not going to back this policy. Labour have come out strongly against it. The TUC realised that because they're backing this march here today so that we can keep our head held high. We are a strong movement. We're going to win this battle. Don't let anyone tell you we're not. We're going to save these animals, and in 300,000 years when they're still here, people will say, this is where we made the stand. This is where we protected badgers. Thank you.